Hey y'all, so this is just a really quick home video, literally home video here, of the foramens of the skull. I feel like the foramens of the skull are a little bit easier to identify when you're looking at them in association with each other. So that way then you can kind of spatially make that visual in your mind of where the foramens are, again, in that spatial association with each other. So let's go through this really quickly. Here, if you look, we're going to start up top here. I always like to start up top, so I'm going to use my pointer here. This is the optic canal or optic foramen here. Just below here is going to be the superior orbital fissure. I'm hoping you can see that pretty well. Superior orbital fissure on the other side. Now I'll show you the inferior orbital fissure in just a minute. As we go back from that, right behind the superior orbital fissure is going to be the foramen rotundum. Here's foramen rotundum. Then as we go back from that here, we're going to have the, on the side here, I always kind of learn the foramen ovale. This one's a really nice depiction of that because it's oval shaped. So there's the foramen ovale here. And then just behind it, that tiny foramen there is the foramen spinosum. And then, so you can see that on this side, foramen ovale, foramen spinosum. Then in the middle here is going to be the foramen lacerum, right here. The carotid foramen is not usually tagged from here. It's difficult to see, but off kind of behind the foramen lacerum and off to the side is going to be the carotid foramen. So again, not usually depicted from this view. I'll show you an inferior view in just a minute where you can see the carotid foramen a little bit better. So, this is the foramen lacerum, carotid foramen. Then as you move back, you can see here is the internal auditory meatus. So here again is the internal auditory meatus, if I can get that for you, internal auditory meatus. Then as we move back here, this large foramen here is going to be the jugular foramen. So I'm hoping you can see that pretty well. Jugular foramen here, jugular foramen here. This really large foramen, largest foramen of the skull, is going to be the foramen magnum here. And let me kind of tilt this so that you can see the hypoglossal foramen. Not these ones. They actually use these holes to attach the skull to an articulated skeleton. But you'll see they have these little depressions here. And these depressions are to depict the hypoglossal foramen here. So just underneath, I'm hoping that you can see that, right? Hypoglossal foramen there. I might try to angle it this way. Hypoglossal foramen there. So those are the main foramens that you're going to see kind of looking inside the skull, looking kind of superior down inferior. So now we're going to flip it over and we're going to go ahead. Oh, actually really quick, I want to show you obviously the orbit. So if you're looking at the orbit here, you can see this is let me show you on this one maybe, the superior orbital fissure, and then you have the inferior orbital fissure down here. So those are probably pretty easy. Usually most students don't have too much trouble with that. So again, superior orbital fissure, inferior orbital fissure. Easy to see because they're these large fissures. And then as you move down here, we'll go ahead, since we're on this side here, we'll do the mental foramen. So these are important, again, for dental anesthesia, important landmarks to know. So there's the mental foramen. And then maybe because you might go mental if you don't get dental anesthesia. Just being funny, sorry. And here is the mandibular foramen on the underside here of the mandible. So mandibular foramen. And then let's go ahead and I'm going to take off the jaw. And we're going to go ahead and look at the inferior side of the skull, the underside of the skull, and we'll go ahead and do the foramens from this side. So really quickly here, obviously foramen magnum is this nice large one. I always like to go, I always kind of like to go from front to back or anterior to posterior, just again, my own way of doing things, but you can pick your own. So here, if you're going to look, this is easy to see. This is the foramen ovale, and then just behind it is the foramen spinosum. So there, those two are really easy, foramen ovale, foramen spinosum, there. Then as you go kind of more medially, if you move medially from those foramens, here is the foramen lacerum, here. And then as you move back here, more posterior, here is the carotid foramen. So here's the carotid foramen, and then here is the jugular foramen. So if you can see there, my hand's not in the way. So carotid foramen, jugular foramen. Let me do this side here. Carotid foramen right here, jugular foramen here. Now you can go ahead and go back from here and see here's the styloid process, mastoid process. So that foramen, that small foramen in between is going to be the stylomastoid foramen. That one's a really nice, easy one. And then you have the foramen magnum. And I believe that was all the foramens that you needed to know. I just wanted to make sure. Your external auditory meatus on the outside there. And also the olfactory foramens here coming out of the cribriform plate. I don't believe that you have to know that, but you might need to know that for lecture. And I believe that's it. So for the foramens, I hope that helps you to visualize the foramens a little bit better. That's kind of the way that I like to teach the foramens in association with each other. I'll give you a nice good look here, and you can kind of quiz yourself if that helps. I know it's hard to not have your hands on a skull, and so I'm hoping this video might help you visualize these foramens a little bit better. Please, as always, feel free to email me if you have any questions or you have some confusion on the foramens.